The first time someone tried to touch my hair, I bit him hard enough to taste blood. Not his, mine. I was 14, too thin, too angry, and too afraid to let any hand reach the side of my head where the truth lived. I wore my hood low, my braids forward, and my lies ready. In Gray Harbor, a girl could survive with the right lie, or the right knife. I learned both. Now I was 23, standing in the same city with the same salt wind crawling up the streets, and my hands still moved on instinct whenever laughter rose behind me. A brush of fingers toward my temple, a small, practiced tilt of my chin, hair sliding like a curtain over what I could not afford to show, because my ears were not human. Even covered, I could feel them. The delicate points that made strangers stare too long, the shape that turned suspicion into cruelty. Years of hiding had trained my scalp to ache whenever the hood shifted. Years of pretending had taught my body to flinch before my mind understood why. I had told myself 1,000 times that it was only fear, only habit, but fear has a smell. It is sharp and metallic, like pennies warmed in a fist, and it always returns when you think you have outgrown it. The bell tower rang noon and the market swelled. Gray Harbor was celebrating the Tide Festival, which meant colored ribbons on door frames and cheap music played too loudly to hide the hunger underneath. The fishermen wanted a good season. The dock bosses wanted higher prices. The city watch wanted an excuse to stand in polished armor and feel important. And I wanted to get home without anyone noticing me. I moved through the crowd with my basket tucked close, keeping my shoulders narrow, my gaze low. I had learned how to make myself smaller than I was, how to let other bodies absorb attention for me. A woman arguing with a fishmonger, a drunk singing off key, a child darting between legs, shrieking with delight. Still, I felt eyes. There were always eyes. I turned toward the spice stalls where the air was thick with cinnamon and smoke. The scents helped. They grounded me. If I focused hard enough, I could pretend I was only a scribe for the dock records, only Leora, a girl with ink stains on her fingers, and rent due on the first of every month. Leora, the name the matron gave me when I was brought to her door, wrapped in a sailcloth blanket, silent as a secret. Leora, the name I answered to when I signed my wages. Leora, the name that never quite fit in my mouth. A hand waved at me from behind a stack of dried seaweed. Rowan, the baker's son, grinning like he owned the sunlight. Flour dusted his forearms. His hair stuck up in a way that meant he had been running. Again, probably from someone's angry husband or an angry dog. He leaned in. You look like you are fleeing an execution. I forced my face into something that could pass for a smile, only fleeing the market. Rowan's gaze flicked to my hood, then away. He never asked. He never joked about it. That was why I tolerated his cheerfulness. There is a rumor, he said, lowering his voice as if the cinnamon itself might gossip. Riders were seen on the north. Rode, silver bridles, horses that do not sweat. My stomach tightened. Do not. Rowan's eyes widened with triumph. Elves. I grabbed his wrist hard enough to make him wince. Do not say that word in the open. He glanced around quickly, chastened. I forgot. Sorry, but it is true. The watch is nervous. They doubled patrols at the gate. I released him and pretended to examine a jar of pepper flakes. My pulse had jumped. It always did when that word appeared, like a stone tossed into still water. Elves were not welcome in Gray Harbor, not after the Old War, not after the treaties failed, not after the stories curdled into hatred, and hatred turned into rules. The city officially claimed it feared raiders from the western forests. Unofficially, it feared anything it could not control. And I feared being seen. Rowan bumped my shoulder lightly. Come watch the procession with me. They are, releasing lanterns on the canal at dusk. You never come. I stared at the pepper flakes until they blurred. I do not like crowds. That is why you should come, he said. You spend too much time alone. You will turn into a ghost and start haunting the tax office. A laugh nearly escaped me, surprising and small. I caught it and swallowed it down. Laughter made you careless. Rowan looked pleased anyway. If you change your mind, meet me near the bridge. When the sun goes down. He hesitated. And, Leora, if anyone bothers you, you tell me. I will shove them into the canal. I shook my head. A silent thank you. He left with the same bright energy he had arrived with, disappearing into the crowd like a spark. I tried to breathe. I told myself it was only a rumor. Riders, silver bridles, horses that do not sweat, the kind of tale that grew teeth by the time it reached the docks. Gray Harbor loved monsters, as long as the monsters lived far away. But the ache in my ears returned, deep and hot, as if my skin remembered something my mind refused to touch. I paid for my spices and turned toward the narrow lane that led back to my room above the cooper's shop. One more street, one more corner, then I could lock my door and breathe like a normal person. That was when the music stopped. Not gradually, not with a wrong note. It stopped as if the air itself had been cut. The crowd shifted, a hush rippled outward from the north gate, and every head turned like wheat bent by wind. I turned too, despite every instinct that screamed at me to keep walking. The city watch was parting, stepping back from the road with faces that had gone pale under their helmets. Horses approached in a slow, controlled line. Their hooves did not clatter like iron. They made a softer sound, like stone touching water. They were taller than any horse I had seen. Their coats were midnight, and their manes moved even when there was no wind. Silver bridles caught the sunlight and threw it into the air in sharp flashes that stung my eyes. Riders sat straight in saddles that looked grown, not crafted. Their cloaks were dark green, their armor a muted sheen that did not reflect like steel, but drank light and held it. Elves, Rowan had said. My throat went dry. I tried to step back, but the crowd pressed in, bodies packed close, hungry for spectacle. A child began to cry. A woman whispered a prayer. Then the last rider entered the street. He did not wear a helmet. His hair fell to his shoulders in pale strands that looked like moonlight pulled into silk. His face was not young, not old. It had the stillness of carved marble and the warmth of living skin. When he looked at the crowd, his eyes moved as if he could hear their thoughts, and then his gaze found me. The world narrowed. My hood felt suddenly too small. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. I lowered my head, turning away, trying to melt into the bodies around me, but I felt him anyway, like a tide pulling at something buried. The rider's horse slowed. The line behind him continued, but he stopped in the middle of the street as if the city were nothing but a stage, and he had chosen his. Mark! The watch captain stepped forward, stammering, "Your Grace." We did not expect. The elf did not look at him. His eyes stayed on me. I could not breathe. I could not move. The crowd was silent enough that I heard the canal water slosh against the stone banks. Somewhere, a lantern string creaked. Then the elf spoke, not loudly, not dramatically, just one name, carried on the air like a note that had always existed, and only now became audible. Saleth. My vision flashed white. Pain lanced through my skull, sharp and clean, and my hood slipped as if my body had betrayed me. Hair shifted. The edge of my ear caught the light, exposed for the first time in years. A gasp rose from the crowd. My hands flew up too late, and the elf's expression changed, not into triumph, not into anger, but into something that made my stomach twist. Recognition. Like he had found something stolen. Like he had finally come home. If you want to keep hearing this story, comment where you are watching from and subscribe so you do not miss the next part. The gasp that rose from the crowd did not sound like surprise. It sounded like hunger. Grey Harbor had always loved a story. It did not matter if the story destroyed the person trapped inside it. Hands pointed. Voices hissed. I heard the word elf like a curse and a prayer at the same time. Someone laughed, sharp and cruel. Someone else spat on the stones near my boots. My hood had slipped just enough, not fully, not a clean reveal, just a single pointed edge catching sunlight. Undeniable. I clamped the fabric back down with both hands, heart hammering so hard it made my ribs ache. My breath came in short, violent pulls that tasted of cinnamon and salt and panic. Move. Now. I tried to shove through the crowd, but bodies pressed in tighter, drawn by the stillness of the riders and the spectacle of my fear. A thick-shouldered man bumped me on purpose and did not apologize. A woman yanked her child away as if I were contagion. Then a voice sliced through the murmurs. Enough. It was not shouted. It did not need to be. The single word landed on the market like a blade laid flat across the throat. The whispers died. Even the crying child fell silent, as if the sound had been taken from him. The elf, on the pale bridled horse, dismounted with a motion so smooth it looked effortless. Boots touched stone. Cloak settled. He stood taller than anyone around him, not because of height alone, but because he carried himself like the world could not deny him. The watch captain stepped forward again, trying to reclaim authority. Your Grace, if there is a disturbance, we can handle it. The elf finally looked at him, and the captain's mouth snapped shut, mid-sentence. I watched the man swallow hard. The guards shifted uneasily, suddenly aware that their polished armor was only decoration. The elf's eyes returned to me. Saleth, he said again, softer this time, not as a declaration, as a reminder. The name hit me differently now. It did not sting like exposure. It pulled at something deep in my chest, like a thread being tugged in the dark. I shook my head, a sharp denial. My name is Leora. The elf's gaze did not waver. That is the name they gave you. Heat rose in my face. My skin felt too tight. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. I wanted to scream at him, to demand how he knew anything about me, to demand why he would do this here, in front of everyone. But the crowd was watching, always watching. I forced my voice steady. I do not know you. A faint smile touched his mouth and vanished, replaced by something grave. You do. His words should have been impossible. They should have been arrogance. They should have been the start of one more legend for the docks to chew on. Instead, they rang with certainty that made my stomach drop. The crowd began to murmur again, lower this time, like waves pulling back before a storm. I saw the shift in their eyes, fear, suspicion, and something else too, opportunity. Grey Harbor did not miss an opportunity to punish what it could not control. A man near the fish stalls pushed forward. She has been living among us, lying to us. A woman snapped, who knows what she is here to do? Another voice, rough and loud, take her to the watch. Let them sort it out. My throat tightened. If they took me, they would not sort it out. They would lock me in the cold cells beneath the watchtower, and someone would come at night with questions and fists and knives. They would call it justice. They would call it protection. I had survived this long by staying invisible. Now, invisibility had been ripped away. I backed up, searching for an escape through the bodies, but every face I met held some version of rejection. Then I saw Rowan. He had shoved his way toward the front, hair wild, eyes wide. He stared at me, then at my hood, then at the elf standing between me and the watch. His mouth opened as if to speak. I shook my head once, hard, a silent plea. Do not. Rowan's jaw tightened. He did not move forward, but he did not leave either. He stayed, trembling, as if holding himself back from doing something reckless. The elf turned slightly, addressing the crowd without raising his voice. She is under my protection. A ripple of shock ran through the onlookers. The watch captain's face flushed. Your Grace, this is our city. If she has broken laws, she has broken none, the elf said. She has hidden. That is not a crime. The man from the fish stalls sneered. It is deceit. The elf's eyes flicked to him. And what would you have done if she told you the truth the first day she walked into your market? The man faltered, lips parting, but no answer came, because everyone knew the answer. They would have driven me out, or worse. The elf looked back at me. Come with me. My lungs refuse to work properly. I do not want to go anywhere with you. I understood why you did not come willingly, he said. That is why I came to you. The audacity of it made me dizzy. You came to me, in the middle of the market, in front of everyone, and spoke a name I have never heard. His gaze softened, but his voice stayed steady. You have heard it, in your sleep, in the moments you thought were dreams. My hands trembled on my hood. I hated that his words landed too close to something true. I hated that. Flashes of memory flickered at the edge of my mind whenever he said Saleth, like moonlight on water, just out of reach. A guard stepped forward, emboldened by the crowd. Your Grace, we must insist. The elf lifted one hand. No spell crackled. No light erupted. He simply lifted his hand, palm outward, and every guard froze. Not physically, not magically, but psychologically. As if they had run into an invisible wall made of authority older than their city. The elf did not look at them again. He extended his other hand toward me, open, unarmed. Come, Saleth, before this place harms you. The crowd stirred, restless. Someone muttered about curses. Someone else whispered about rewards. I felt the threat turning in the air, thick as smoke. I had a choice, and neither path felt safe. If I ran, they might chase. If I stayed, they would take me. If I went with him, I was stepping into the story Rowan had warned me about, the one I had tried to bury under years of pretending. My fingers tightened on the hood until my knuckles ached. Then, from somewhere behind me, a stone hit the ground near my foot and shattered into chips. A boy's voice cried, "Monster!" Another stone flew. Time snapped. Rowan surged forward then, shouting, "Stop! Leave her alone!" The crowd reacted like a swarm. Someone shoved Rowan back. Another hand grabbed at my cloak, trying to pull me toward the watch. Panic exploded in my chest. I twisted away, but the grip held. The elf moved. One step, impossibly fast, and his hand closed around the wrist holding me. He did not wrench. He did not break bones. He simply applied pressure in a way that made the man gasp and release instantly, like his body had been reminded of its fragility. The elf's other arm came around my shoulders, firm, protective, and in that instant the scent of him hit me. Pine after rain, cold stone warmed by sun, something wild and ancient. My breath caught, because I knew that scent. I had smelled it in dreams that left me crying when I woke. The elf leaned close enough that only I could hear him. Do you remember the lake, little star? Do you remember the vow you made beneath the silver trees? My vision blurred, the world tilted, and before I could answer, before I could deny, he lifted me onto his horse as if I weighed nothing, swung up behind me, and turned the mount toward the north road. The crowd roared with outrage. Rowan shouted my name. Leora, wait. But the horse moved like wind, slipping through the gap between guards and market stalls, as if the city itself was forced to make room. I clung to the saddle, hood still pulled tight, heart pounding, ears burning under the fabric. Behind us, Grey Harbor shrank into noise. Ahead, the road opened into uncertain forest, and the elf's voice hovered near my ear, calm as winter. "You can hate me later, Saleth," he murmured, "but you will not die in a human cage today." And for the first time in years, I realized my hiding had never been the only prison I lived in. If you want the next part, comment one word that describes how you would feel in her place, and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. The forest swallowed Grey Harbor the way deep water swallows a shout. At first I kept twisting in the saddle, trying to see the city behind us, trying to hold on to the only streets I understood, but the trees thickened and the road narrowed, and soon there was nothing but dark trunks and moss, and the steady breath of the horse beneath me. The elf sat behind me like a living wall. His arm remained around my middle, not tight enough to bruise, but firm enough that I could not pretend I could jump off and vanish. Every time the horse leapt a root or dipped through a shallow stream, his hand adjusted without hesitation, catching me before fear could turn into a fall. I hated how safe that felt. I hated how my body noticed the warmth of him through layers of cloth, how my lungs filled with that scent that did not belong to Grey Harbor. Pine after rain, cold stone, a place I had never been, and yet somehow remembered. I pulled my hood lower until the fabric pressed against my ears. It made the skin tender, but I welcomed the pain. Pain was simple. Pain was mine. "You could have gotten me killed," I said, voice raw from swallowed panic. "You were going to be taken," he replied. "Taken is a slow way of dying. You do not know what I have survived." His breath brushed the edge of my hair as he spoke, calm as if he had been waiting years for this. "Argument. I know exactly what you survived. I know the names you were called. I know the rooms you hid in. I know the nights you slept with a knife under your palm and still woke shaking." My stomach clenched. I sat straighter, fighting the sudden trembling in my hands. "Stop pretending you know me." He did not answer at once. The horse's hooves softened on pine needles, and the only other sound was wind, dragging through branches like a sigh. Then he said quietly, "I'm not pretending." I turned my face slightly, just enough to see the edge of his jaw. In the slanting forest light, his skin looked carved, but when he moved, it was undeniably real. Not a story, not a rumor, a presence. "I do not remember you," I said, and forced the words out like a weapon. "I do not remember any lake. I do not remember vows. I do not remember a court or silver trees. I remember Grey Harbor. I remember hunger. I remember hands reaching for me. That is what I remember." His arm tightened for one heartbeat, then eased again, as if he had to control an instinct. "Memory can be taken," he said. "It can be buried. It can be bent. That does not make it gone." I let out a bitter laugh that sounded wrong in my throat. "So now you are telling me my mind is broken too?" "No," he said. "I am telling you someone broke it on purpose." The words landed hard, enough that I stopped breathing. We rode for another stretch in silence. The forest changed around us, the air growing cooler, the ground rising. Ferns gave way to low brush. Pale mushrooms glowed faintly at the base of fallen logs, like tiny lanterns meant for creatures smaller than my hand. The horse slowed near a creek so clear I could see stones at the bottom, silvered by moving light. The elf guided the mount off the path and into a small hollow where the trees bent close, shielding the space like a secret. The other riders were there already, their horses drinking quietly. They looked at me once, respectful and unreadable, then looked away as if my presence required no explanation. That unsettled me more than stares. The elf slid down first, then reached up to lift me from the saddle. I tried to pull away, but his hands were steady, and the moment my boots hit the ground, my knees threatened to fold. My body had been clenched for so long it forgot how to stand without bracing for impact. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He did not comment. He simply turned slightly so his cloak blocked me from the others and said, "Sit." It was not an order meant to humiliate. It was the tone of someone who expected obedience because he cared what happened if you refused. I lowered myself onto a flat stone near the creek. My fingers shook. As I adjusted my hood, making sure every strand of hair lay exactly where it should, I could feel the pointed tips of my ears throbbing under the pressure. The elf crouched in front of me, up close. His eyes were not the cold color I expected. They were a deep green, like forest shadow over water. Ancient, yes, but not empty. "You will hurt yourself doing that," he said, looking at my hood. "It is none of your concern." "It is my concern," he replied, and for the first time his voice carried something sharper than calm. "Because you are tearing your own skin to hide what you are. What I am is a target." His gaze softened again, but it did not retreat. What you are is mine to protect. The possessive phrasing sent heat up my neck. I pushed to my feet, sudden anger giving me strength. I am not yours. I am not anyone's. I do not belong to you or to Gray Harbor or to any story you dragged into the market like a knife. He rose too, and the difference between us became obvious. Not just height, presence, the way the air seemed to settle around him. You are right, he said. You do not belong to me like property. You never did. You belong to yourself. That is why I came. That is why I spoke your true name, because someone made you forget it to make you easier to control. My mouth went dry again. True name. He lifted a hand slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. In our people, names are not labels. They are roots. They hold what you are. When a true name is taken, the soul feels it. It is like living with one lung. I stared at him, caught between disbelief and the aching familiarity his words stirred. If you knew all this, why did you not come sooner? For the first time, something like pain crossed his face. It was small, but it made him look less like a legend and more like someone who had failed. I tried, he said, many times. I followed traces that turned to smoke. I found lies planted like footprints. The one who took you understood our ways. He hid you where our sight could not reach. My throat tightened. Who took me? He held my gaze as if bracing me for impact. A man who once served my court. The creek murmured beside us. One of the horses snorted softly. Far away, a bird called. My voice came out thin. If you are not pretending, then tell me who you are. He did not hesitate. I am King Caileron of the Sylvan Court, he said. And you, Saleth, are the lost blood of my realm. Not a rumor, not a mistake, not a dockside orphan. You were stolen from us. The world tilted again, but this time it was not panic. It was something deeper, a crack in the foundation of everything I had built my life upon. I forced myself to breathe. If that is true, I whispered, why do I feel like I am about to fall apart? King Caileron stepped closer, careful and quiet, and for the first time he spoke my name as if it were a promise instead of a revelation. Because you have been holding yourself together with fear, he said, and fear is finally running out. Night came differently in the deep forest. In Gray Harbor, darkness was a thing that crept between alleyways and waited behind doors. Here, it fell like a curtain drawn by an invisible hand. The air cooled fast, clean and sharp, and the trees drank the last light until the world became a corridor of shadows. We camped in the hollow beside the creek. The other riders moved with quiet purpose, building a low fire that did not crackle loudly, setting bedrolls, checking blades. No one stared at me. No one whispered. That should have eased me, but instead, it made my skin prickle as if I had stepped into someone else's dream. King Caileron spoke to them in a low voice I could not fully hear. When he returned, he carried a small bundle of cloth and a cup that steamed faintly. I did not want anything from him. That was what I told myself. But when he crouched near me and held out the cup, the scent rising from it made my throat tighten. Not because it smelled dangerous, because it smelled like something I had lost without knowing it. Sweet bark and crushed mint, warmth threaded with a faint bitterness. My hands hesitated, then took it. The cup was carved wood, smooth from use. The heat seeped into my fingers. What is it? I asked. Rest, he said. Drink. It will stop the shaking. I almost snapped that I was not shaking. Then I looked down and saw the truth. My hands were trembling so lightly, the surface of the tea rippled. I wrapped both palms around the cup to hide it. I hate that you did this. I know, he said. That simple agreement took some of my anger away, leaving only exhaustion. I drank. The taste was strange but not unpleasant. It spread through my chest like a slow exhale. For a few minutes we listened to the creek and the fire. The riders spoke softly among themselves, their voices blending with the night. Farther away, something howled, but it sounded more lonely than threatening. Caileron sat across from me, close enough that I could see the edge of scar tissue along his left hand when the firelight shifted. I caught myself staring and looked away. You have been hurt, I said before I could stop myself. His gaze followed mine to his hand. He flexed his fingers once, many times. By humans, I added, and hated the bitterness in my voice. His eyes returned to my face. By those who feared what they could not own. It was not an answer that spared anyone. It was an answer that named the truth without feeding hatred. It unsettled me. I swallowed and adjusted my hood again, automatically. The fabric scraped my ears and my scalp burned. Caileron watched the movement. His voice softened. You do not have to do that here. Yes, I do. No one will touch you without permission. I stared at him. That is not the only reason. His expression changed, and something in his stillness invited honesty without demanding it. I hated that too. I set the cup down and forced the words out. When I was younger, the matron tried to help me. She said she could make my ears look normal. She wrapped them tight every night, cloth soaked in something that smelled like vinegar. She said it would train them, like bending a sapling. Kailaren's jaw tightened. It hurt, I continued, voice flattening as if distance would make it safer. The skin split sometimes. She said pain was worth it if it kept me alive, so I learned to believe her. I learned to think that being myself was the dangerous part. The fire popped softly. I realized I was breathing too fast again. Kailaren spoke carefully. May I see? My chest locked. No. He did not argue. He only nodded once, accepting the boundary. Then he said, just so you know, Salith, there are healers in my realm who can mend skin without changing what you are, if you ever want that. I did not trust the gentleness in his words. Gentleness had always been a trap. It came with strings, with debt. I pulled my knees up and hugged them, turning slightly away. I do not understand why you care. A long pause, the kind that held weight. Then he said, because when you vanished, my realm began to rot at its edges. I looked at him sharply. He held my gaze, the fire turning gold in his eyes. There are old wards around our borders. They were woven with names, true names. Yours was one of them. My stomach dropped. You are saying I am some kind of lock. I am saying you are part of what kept the court safe, he replied. Not as a tool, as a living thread in a living weave. When you were taken, the weave weakened. Shadows found cracks. My throat went dry. What kind of shadows? Kailaren's voice went quieter. The kind that speaks in borrowed voices. The kind that promises people what they want most, then eats what is left of them. I thought of Grey Harbor, of rumors that swelled like storms. I thought of the way the crowd had turned on me the moment they saw the edge of my ear. How quickly fear became cruelty. How quickly cruelty became entertainment. Who took me? I asked. Tell me his name. Kailaren looked past me into the darkness, as if he could see the memory there. His name is Maelor. The name sounded sharp, like metal drawn slowly from a sheath. He was a keeper of lore, Kailaren continued, a man who understood the old magic of names. He served my court until he began to believe the court should serve him. He wanted power that does not belong to any one hand. So he stole a child, I said, and forced the words through my teeth. Yes, Kailaren said simply, and he hid you among humans, because he knew we would hesitate to step into a city that hates us. He knew politics could be a cage, too. The anger in me rose fast and hot. Not only at Maelor, at the thought that my life had been shaped by someone's strategy, that my fear had been useful to an enemy. I stood suddenly, needing air. The forest swayed. I pressed a hand to a tree trunk, feeling the rough bark under my palm. Kailaren rose as well, but he did not close the distance. He spoke from where he stood, giving me space. I will not ask you to forgive me for being late. Good, I snapped. He nodded again. I will ask you to let me bring you home anyway. Home. The word hit me with a strange ache. Grey Harbor had never felt like home. It had felt like shelter at best, like a compromise my survival forced on me. But the forest around me, the scent of the tea, the way the night air wrapped my skin without disgust, it all tugged at something deeper than logic. As I stood there, breathing in pine and smoke, a sound drifted from the riders' camp. One of them was humming, barely audible, a melody that rose and fell like a lullaby. My heart stuttered. I knew that song. I did not know how I knew, but my body knew. My bones knew. The note slid under my ribs and pulled, hard. My vision blurred. For a moment, the trees around me changed. The dark trunks became pale silver columns. The creek became a lake reflecting stars. I saw my own hands, smaller, reaching toward the surface as if the water held a secret. Then the image snapped away and I gasped, bending forward as if punched. Kailaren moved instantly, but he stopped short again, controlled. Salith. I pressed my fingers to my temple, trying to steady myself. I heard it, I whispered. The song. I heard it before. Kailaren's face went very still. That is the border lullaby of the Sylvan Court. My throat tightened. Why would a writer know it? Because he is not just a writer, Kailaren said. He is one of my sentinels, and we are close now. Close to what? Kailaren's eyes lifted beyond the hollow, toward the slope where the forest thickened, close to the first ward. A sudden wind moved through the trees, colder than before. The fire dipped. The shadows seemed to lean in, listening. And in that wind, beneath the creak of branches, I heard something else. A whisper that was not made by any mouth I could see. It was soft, familiar. It slid along the edge of my mind like a hand finding a hidden door. Leora, it breathed. Not Salith. Leora. My blood turned to ice, because only one place in my life had ever spoken that name like it owned me. Grey Harbor. And we were far from Grey Harbor now. Maelor found me, I whispered. Kailaren's gaze sharpened, and for the first time I felt his control strain, like a bowstring pulled tight. Stay close to me, he said. Whatever you hear, do not answer. The whisper returned, closer, almost tender. come back. And something in the dark began to move toward our camp without making a sound. The whisper slid through the trees like fog creeping under a door. Leora. It did not sound like the crowd in Grey Harbor. It did not sound like a stranger trying to bait me. It sounded like a voice that had spoken that name, beside my pillow, night after night, until I believed it was the only thing I had. My throat tightened, my tongue pressed against my teeth, as if my own mouth might betray me. Cailerin stepped closer, not touching me, but placing his body between mine and the dark slope beyond the creek. His riders moved at once. No shouts, no panic, just a quiet shift of purpose. 2 of them extinguished the fire with damp earth. Another lifted a hand and the horses went still, as if they understood the danger better than we did. A shape moved between the trees. Not a beast, not a man, a distortion, like the air itself was being folded wrong. The shadows around it looked thicker, heavier, as if they belonged to a different night. Cailerin spoke in a low tongue I did not know, and the sentinels spread out, forming a shallow arc. Their blades did not gleam. They seemed to drink the faint starlight and hold it. I kept my eyes on the distortion, trying to prove to myself that it was only fear making patterns. Then the distortion became a person. A woman stepped out of the trees, hunched slightly, hands clasped as if cold. Gray hair in a tight braid, a familiar limp, a familiar scarf tied around her neck. Matron Elda. My chest went hollow. For a heartbeat I smelled soap and vinegar. I heard the creak of orphanage stairs. I felt cloth being wrapped too tight around my ears, the sting that always came before the split skin. The woman lifted her face, and her eyes were exactly right. Tired, worried, almost kind. Leora, she said again, and this time it sounded like relief. Thank the tides. Come here. Come to me. You are in danger. My knees weakened. My hands rose toward her before I realized I was moving. Cailerin caught my wrist gently but firmly, stopping the motion without hurting. Me, do not answer, he murmured. So close his breath brushed my hair. Do not go to it. It is her, I whispered. His grip tightened a fraction. No, it is wearing her. Matron Elda took a step closer. The sentinels shifted, blades angled, but she did not flinch. She smiled at them as if they were unruly children. Sweet girl, she said, you do not belong with them. They will take you away. They will use you. You know what they are. My heart hammered. The words pressed on my fears like fingers finding bruises. She turned her gaze to Cailerin, and the smile sharpened. And you always were selfish. Always wanted what you could not keep. Cailerin did not react. His voice stayed steady. Mailer. Matron Elda laughed softly, and the sound was wrong. It was too smooth, too pleased. The skin around her eyes did not move with it. So you remember me? She said, and her voice shifted mid-sentence, deepening into something colder. Good. I did not come for you, little king. I came for what you lost. Her eyes returned to me, and the world narrowed again. Leora, she said, and now the name was not comfort. It was a hook. Speak to me, just once. Let me know you are safe. My tongue pressed hard against my teeth. I could feel the pull in my chest like invisible hands trying to guide my voice out of my body. Why does it matter? I forced out, barely moving my lips. Cailerin leaned closer. Because names are doors. If you answer to the wrong one, you open. Matron Elda took another step. The air around her thickened. The creek went silent, as if even water was listening. You are tired, she murmured. You are lonely. You are so tired of hiding. I can take you back. I can make it quiet again. No more fear. No more pain. Say your name. My vision blurred. A flash hit me, sudden and bright. Lake under starlight, silver trees, a child kneeling at the edge of the water, hands trembling, trying not to cry. A boy beside her, older than a child but not yet a man, with moon-pale hair and eyes like forest shadow. He held a small crown of woven leaves in his hands like it was sacred. He was looking at me, and he was saying something I could not fully hear, but I felt the shape of it in my bones. Saleth. The memory vanished and left me, gasping. Cailerin watched my face as if he had seen the flicker too. He spoke quickly, still calm, but urgency threaded beneath it. You are remembering. Hold it. Do not let it slip. Matron Elda tilted her head, curious. Ah, she said. There it is. The rot in the weave. The crack I can pry open. The sentinels advanced one step as a unit, blades raised, but the shadow in the woman did not fear steel. Darkness coiled at her feet like smoke, spreading over the moss, creeping toward my boots. My body froze. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to run. The trees were a wall. The road was behind the thing wearing Matron Elda's face. Cailerin lifted his hand and pressed it to his chest, then to mine without actually touching, like he was marking the air. Saleth, he said, and his voice became a thread I could grab. If you can speak your true name, do it now. Not for me, for you. My throat clenched. Because speaking it meant admitting it was mine. It meant letting go of Leora, the safe lie that had kept me alive. Matron Elda smiled wider. Yes, little one. Say it. Let me hear you. Let me take you home." The darkness at her feet surged. I felt it lick at my ankles, cold as deep water. I could not breathe. My hood felt like a cage, and suddenly I was done. Done with the cloth, done with the ache, done with flinching every time someone laughed. My hands rose and yanked the hood back. Night air hit my ears and they burned with relief, sharp and clean. The points caught starlight. I heard a sentinel inhale softly, not in disgust, but in recognition. I looked straight at the thing wearing Matron Elda. My voice shook, but it was mine. "My name is Saleth." The words hit the air like a bell. The forest answered. A faint glow rose along the ground, lines of light that had been invisible a moment before, threading through roots and stones like veins. The first ward. Matron Elda's smile faltered. The darkness at her feet recoiled as if scorched. "No," the cold voice hissed, and the face flickered. For an instant, I saw something else beneath it. A tall figure made of shadow and hunger, eyes like pale embers. Cailerin stepped forward, and now his voice carried power that did not need shouting. By the ward, and by her. "Name, you will not pass." The light flared. The shadow screamed without a mouth. The air twisted violently, then snapped back, and the thing was dragged backward into the trees like smoke sucked into a crack. Silence dropped. I stood shaking, ears exposed, hair loose around my shoulders, breath ragged. The sentinels lowered their blades slowly, eyes on the dark slope as if expecting another attack. Cailerin turned to me. For the first time, his composure broke just enough for me to see what he had been holding back. Relief, fierce and raw. He took one careful step closer. "You did it." I swallowed hard. "My name is not a spell. No," he said quietly. "It is a truth, and truth has weight in this world." My knees threatened to give out again. The adrenaline drained fast, leaving weakness behind. I stared into the trees where the thing had vanished. "It will come back," I whispered. "Yes," Cailerin said, "and next time it will not wear kindness." He lifted his cloak and draped it around my shoulders without touching my ears, as if he understood the new tenderness there. Then he nodded toward the slope beyond the creek. "We cross the ward line now," he said. "Once we pass, the forest changes. The path will try to test you." "Test me how?" Cailerin held my gaze. "It will ask who you are when no one is watching, and it will not accept a lie." The words made my stomach turn, because I had lived on lies for years, and now the forest wanted the one thing I had never learned how to give: myself. "If you want me to continue, tell me okay, and I will send the next part." We left the hollow before dawn. The sentinels moved like shadows that had learned patience, packing the camp without noise, smoothing earth over the last trace of fire. The creek kept running as if nothing had happened, but I felt the night still clinging to my skin, cold where the false Matron Elda had stood. Cailerin walked beside me while the horses were led single file up the slope. He did not touch me again, but I felt his attention like a steady hand hovering near a bruise. The ward line was not a gate. There was no stone arch, no warning sign, no watchtower. It was simply a place where the forest stopped pretending to be ordinary. The air grew thinner, cleaner. The trees leaned inward, their bark pale as bone under the first light. The ground beneath my boots softened, not with mud, but with moss so dense it felt like stepping on breath. I swallowed and pulled my hair back, leaving my ears uncovered. The tips burned with chill, then warmed, as if the forest itself was learning me. Cailerin slowed. He lifted one hand and traced a small shape in the air, not a dramatic gesture, just a quiet mark of respect. "From here," he said, "the court hears you." My chest tightened. "It hears me how?" "It hears what you try to hide," he replied. "It listens for your true name, and for the truth that name carries." I wanted to joke that my truth was mostly fear and stubbornness, but the words would not come. The whisper in the night had been real. The thing behind Matron Elda had been real, and the ward had lit for me the moment I spoke Saleth. I had felt it, like a thread snapping into place. The sentinels paused behind us. One of them, a woman with dark braids and eyes like flint, nodded once at Cailerin, then at me. It was not reverence, it was acknowledgement, as if I had finally shown a credential I did not know I carried. Cailerin looked at me. "Are you ready?" "No," was the honest answer. But if I said no, the forest would not stop. "I am here," I said instead. He seemed to accept that. Then, walk. We crossed. At first nothing happened. The same trees, the same moss, the same low morning mist that curled around roots. Then the path split. It had not been split a moment ago, I was certain. One trail curved left, dark and narrow, as if it led deeper into a place where sunlight feared to go. The other curved right, and my heart lurched because I knew that road, Grey Harbor. The north road that led back to the city, the market, my room, above the cooper's shop, my small, controlled life. I even smelled it. Salt, fish, smoke, the faint sourness of stale beer. The path to the right looked worn by boots, familiar with human steps. A voice called from that direction. Leora. It was Rowan. My breath caught so sharply it hurt. He stood at the edge of the right path, hair messy, shirt half tucked like always. He looked tired and frightened, but when he saw me, his face lit with relief. There you are, he said. I have been looking everywhere. They said you were taken. I told them they were wrong. Come on, we can get you out. I have a place, I swear. The words hit all the soft parts in me, the parts that had wanted to believe I could have something simple, a friend, a life, a safe corner in a hard city. My feet shifted before I realized it. Cailerin did not grab me. He only spoke softly at my side. Do you hear the trick? It sounds like him, I whispered. It is using what you want, Cailerin said. If you follow, it will lead you into the old world that broke you, not because it loves you, because it wants you small again. Rowan took a step closer. His eyes went to my uncovered ears, and he did not recoil. He only looked pained. I did not know, he said. I swear I did not know. If I had known, I would have helped you sooner. Please, you do not have to go with them. You do not have to be part of whatever war this is. My throat tightened. Rowan. He smiled like he could fix this with a smile. Yeah, you remember me. That is good. Come on, Leora, please. The name struck like a hook. I felt the forest listening. I felt the ward lines under the moss, waiting. I looked at Rowan's face. I looked into his eyes, and something was wrong. Just one small thing, like a seam in a garment turned inside out. He did not have flour on his hands. Rowan always had flour on his hands. My stomach turned cold. I took a slow breath. My voice came out steady, surprising me. You are not him. The smile froze, then softened into something almost sad. I can be, the thing said through Rowan's mouth. I can be whoever keeps you safe. You are tired. You can rest. You can hide again. You were good at hiding. Behind the illusion, the air darkened, thickening around. The right path, the scent of salt soured into rot. The edges of Rowan's figure blurred, as if the forest was peeling the lie away. Cailerin's gaze hardened. Mailer's hand is long, he said quietly, but it cannot hold your name unless you give it. My heart hammered. I glanced at the left path. It looked like fear made into a road. Unknown, cold, honest. I looked back at the right path. Familiar, warm, a cage disguised as home. Rowan's voice, softened again, pleading. Leora, please. I lifted my chin. My ears caught the thin morning light. For the first time, I did not flinch at the thought of being seen. My name is Saleth, I said. The air shuddered. The illusion snapped like a thin branch underfoot. Rowan's shape collapsed into shadow, then pulled backward as if yanked by an unseen cord. The right path dimmed, the stones crumbling into moss, the smell of Grey Harbor dissolving into clean forest air. The path to the left brightened, not with sunlight, but with clarity. It was still narrow, still dark, but it was real. I exhaled slowly, shaking. Cailerin watched me with something like pride he did not try to hide. Again, he said gentle. Say it again, so the court hears you. I swallowed. My voice wavered, but I spoke anyway. Saleth. The moss under my boots warmed. A faint glow moved along the ground ahead like the forest approving a step. I glanced at Cailerin. How many tests like that? As many as it takes for you to stop reaching for the lie first, he said. I should have been angry at the bluntness. Instead, my eyes stung, because he was right. We walked the left path. The forest deepened around us, and with each step I felt something in my chest loosen. A knot I had lived with so long I thought it was part of me. After a time, Cailerin spoke, without looking at me. When you were small, you used to fear the dark. You would hold my sleeve until you fell asleep. My breath caught. You said I did not remember you. How do you remember me like that? He paused, then finally looked at me. In the pale morning, his face seemed less like marble and more like a man carrying a weight. Because you mattered, he said, and because I promised I would find you, even if you forgot I existed. My throat tightened. I wanted to ask what I had been to him, a ward thread, a lost blood, a child he failed to protect. But the way he said promised made my chest ache in a different place. We kept walking, and the forest kept listening, and somewhere ahead, beyond the thickening trees, I felt something waiting. Not a monster, not a trap, a presence, like a home that had been holding its breath for years, waiting for me to finally say my name and mean it. The first time I saw the Sylvan Court, I understood why humans feared it. Not because it looked cruel, because it looked alive. The forest opened without warning, like a breath released. One step I was walking between dark trunks and damp moss, and the next I was standing at the edge of a vast glade where the trees grew in perfect, quiet symmetry. Their bark was pale silver, their leaves a deep green that shimmered as if each one held a drop of moonlight inside it. No walls, no towers, no gates, and yet I felt the border more clearly than any stone barricade. It pressed against my skin with a gentle insistence, like hands checking a scar. The sentinels slowed. The horses grew calmer, ears flicking forward as if they recognized the place. Even the air changed. It tasted sweet and cold, like water drawn from deep earth. Cailerin stopped beside me and spoke softly. The court will look at you, Saleth, not like humans did, but it will still feel like being seen. My throat tightened. I do not know how to be seen. His gaze stayed on my face, steady. Then we learned together. Together. The word landed in my chest in a way I did not expect. I glanced at him, searching for a hint of manipulation, a hint of politics, but he looked almost tense, like a man walking into a room where he could lose something. Before I could ask, movement stirred among the silver trees. Figures emerged, silent as fog. Elves, many of them, some in armor that looked grown from leaf and bark, some in robes that carried subtle patterns like moving water. Their faces turned toward me at once. I felt the old instinct rise, cover, hide, shrink, but my hood was gone. My ears were bare. The points caught light. A murmur traveled through the group. Not disgust, not fear, recognition, like a name, spoken in a room that had been waiting for it. A woman stepped forward. She was tall, with dark braids and flint eyes, the sentinel who had nodded at me earlier. Up close, I saw a thin scar that cut through one eyebrow and softened her sternness. Nerys, Cailerin said, and there was trust in his voice. Her eyes stayed on me. She studied my face, my ears, the tension in my shoulders, the way my fingers kept hovering near my hair, as if itching for a hood that was no longer there. Then she dipped her head slightly, a gesture that felt like respect rather than ceremony. Saleth, she said. Hearing my name from another mouth made my stomach twist. It did not feel like a weapon here. It felt like a bell answered. I swallowed. I am not sure I am her. Nerys took one careful step closer. You are. Even if you had to survive as something else. Her gaze flicked to my ears, and for the first time I saw it clearly in someone else's eyes. The skin was not smooth. There were faint seams, old splits healed wrong, places where the tissue thickened from years of pressure. Shame surged hot in my throat. I turned slightly away, but Nerys did not let me vanish. She spoke as if naming a truth that deserved daylight. Someone hurt you. I forced out a breath. Someone taught me it was necessary. Nerys looked at Cailerin then, and something sharp flashed in. Her eyes. The court has healers. No more necessity. Cailerin's jaw tightened. I will make sure of it. Another figure approached, older, with hair like frost and eyes that seemed to hold centuries. When this elf looked at me, I felt as if the forest itself was peering through him. You carry ward light, he said, voice quiet and resonant. It clings to you as if you were always meant to be part of it. Cailerin spoke with controlled formality. Lord Averin. She crossed the first ward by her true name. Averin's gaze rested on me, and the pressure of it made my skin prickle. Then he said, as if confirming something he already knew, the lost thread returns. The words made my chest tighten. I am not a thread. I am a person. Averin's expression did not change, but the air softened slightly, like the court listening to my protest and approving the spine in it. Yes, he said, and a person is the hardest kind of thread to break. Welcome home, Saleth. Home. The glade shimmered at the edges of my vision. I did not cry. I refused. Tears felt too much like surrender, but my body betrayed me anyway. My hands shook. My breath trembled. My heart ached in a place I had not known existed. Cailerin moved closer, not touching, but standing near enough that I could feel his warmth in the cool air. You are safe here. I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so badly my throat hurt. Nerys gestured toward a path that looked like light laid across grass. The council will demand answers. They will ask what you remember. I let out a hollow laugh. That will take a moment. Cailerin's gaze held mine. We will not force it. We started forward. The silver trees seemed to lean subtly as we passed, their leaves whispering without wind. Not words, not exactly. More like a sound that stirred something deep in my bones. Then it happened. As we crossed deeper into the glade, my mind flashed with memory so vivid I staggered. A lake under starlight. A smaller version of myself, hair loose, ears uncovered, laughing as if laughter had never been dangerous. And Cailerin, younger, kneeling beside me, holding a crown of woven leaves. His hands were gentler then, his eyes still green shadow over water, and he said a name that was not just Saleth. It had more syllables, more meaning. It sounded like a promise wrapped in song. My vision snapped back. I swayed, and Cailerin caught my elbow, careful and quick. His touch was warm, solid, real. His voice went low. What did you see? I swallowed hard. I saw you, by the lake. His hand tightened slightly, then eased. The first place you learned your true name. I stared at him. I learned it from you. Something in his face shifted. Not triumph, not relief. Something that looked like longing held behind iron. Before he could answer, a cold sensation crawled up my inner wrist. I flinched and looked down. A dark mark had appeared on my skin, thin as ink, curling like a vine around my wrist bone. It pulsed once, faintly, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Neris swore under her breath. Averin's eyes sharpened. Kaloran's face went very still. Maelor touched you, Kaloran said quietly. I backed away a step, panic rising. How? When? Kaloran's gaze locked on mine. In the moment you remembered the lake. Memory is a door too. The mark tightened, and for a heartbeat the world tilted, as if something far away had tugged on my bones. Then a voice slid into my mind, smooth as oil, familiar as fear. Little star, not Saleth, not Leora, little star. I could not tell where it came from, but I knew exactly who it belonged to. Kaloran stepped closer, urgency breaking through his control. Do not answer. Whatever he offers, do not answer. The mark pulsed again, and in the shimmering reflection of a nearby pool, I saw a face that was not mine smiling back at me from the water. The face in the water smiled like it had been waiting for me. It was not an illusion, shaped from my memories the way the forest had done. This was sharper, cleaner, intentional, a presence pressing from the other side of the reflection as if the pool were a window, not a surface. The dark mark on my wrist tightened, and pain flashed up my arm, hot and quick. I bit back a sound. Kaloran stepped in front of the pool, blocking the reflection from my eyes. His voice stayed low, but the edge in it was new. Averin, seal the glade. Neris, keep the sentinels close. The court moved at once, not frantic, not afraid, focused. The silver trees around us brightened subtly, as if the forest itself had been called to attention. A faint line of light rose along the ground, a circle forming around the pool. I stared at my wrist. The mark pulsed again, and the voice slid into my mind like silk over a blade. Little star, you found your way home. How sweet. My stomach twisted. I did not move my lips. I did not answer. Kaloran did not look away from me. He spoke softly, as if anchoring me with sound. That is not your name. That is bait. But the voice laughed inside my skull. I can call her whatever I please, it said. She has worn my gift for years. The human name, the human fear. I shaped her so well. Anger rose in my chest so fast it stole my breath. I had been stolen, hidden, twisted into something smaller, and I had blamed myself for struggling to breathe inside the shape I was forced into. Averin stepped to the pool's edge and lifted his hands. His voice was calm, but the air thickened with power. This place is warded. You will not cross. The face in the water flickered, then sharpened. The smile widened. I do not need to cross, the voice purred. I only need her to open. The mark tightened again, and a sudden wave of dizziness rolled through me. Images flashed behind my eyes, too fast to hold. A room in Grey Harbor, candlelight shaking on the walls, cloth wrapped tight around my ears, Matron Elda whispering, "This is for your good. This will keep you alive." Then another image, colder, a tall figure in a dark cloak standing in a doorway, a hand reaching toward my forehead, a voice saying something I could not understand, and then emptiness like a door slammed shut inside my mind. I gasped and staggered. Kaloran caught me, one hand on my forearm, steadying without crushing. "Look at me," he said. "Not the water. Me." I forced my eyes up. His gaze held mine like a rope thrown to a drowning person. "You are here," he said. "You are in the court. You are not in Grey Harbor. Breathe." I breathed, once, twice. My lungs shook. Neris crouched beside me, eyes hard with protective fury. The mark is a tether. If he pulls again, it will try to drag her mind through the crack. Averin's expression darkened. Then we closed the crack. "How?" I whispered. Averin looked at Kaloran, with her full true name, spoken by her, in the place it was first given. My throat went dry. The lake. Kaloran's jaw tightened. He does not want her to remember. That is why he is striking now. The voice inside my head turned velvet soft. "Saleth," it cooed. "You do not need to fight. You can rest. You can be small again. You can be safe. Come back to the city. Come back to the simple life. I will take the pain away. I will take the sharp memories and leave you only warmth." My body trembled, not because I wanted him, because some part of me wanted the idea of no pain. Kaloran seemed to sense it. He leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "Pain is not the only thing you will lose," he said. "He will take your spine with it. He will take your choice." I stared at the mark and felt my anger harden into something steadier. All my life, people had called my fear wisdom. They had called my hiding survival. They had called my silence good behavior. but the truth was simpler. I had been trained to disappear, and I was done disappearing. I lifted my wrist toward the pool, not in surrender, but in confrontation. My voice was quiet, but it did not shake. I will not open for you. The reflection rippled violently, and the smile cracked. The voice sharpened. You cannot stop what is already bound. Averin stepped forward. You are bound by a stolen door, not by her will. Cailerin looked at me. We go to the lake now. If you cannot walk, I will carry you. But we do it now. I swallowed. My legs felt weak, but they were mine. I can walk, I said. We moved through the glade in a tight formation. The silver trees whispered. The ground glowed faintly beneath my steps, not guiding me like a leash, but lighting the way like a welcome. The voice followed, of course. It whispered Rowan's laughter, Matron Elda's tired kindness, the market smell of cinnamon and salt, every familiar comfort it could dress itself in. I kept my lips sealed and my eyes forward. Then we reached the lake. It was exactly as my broken memory had shown me. Dark water reflecting a sky scattered with stars. Silver trees leaning close, their leaves moving though there was no wind. The air tasted like cold light. My knees nearly gave out. The place felt like a wound and a cradle at the same time. Cailerin stopped at the shore. His voice softened. This is where you were named. I stared at the water. The surface was smooth as glass, and in it I saw myself not as a terrified orphan, not as a hidden worker in a human city, but as a woman with pointed ears uncovered, eyes bright with storm and starlight. The mark on my wrist pulsed. The voice returned, suddenly furious. Say it then, it hissed. Say your precious name. It is mine too. I heard it first. I took it first. A memory rose, clear enough to hurt. I was small, sitting on this shore, crying because I had been frightened by the dark. A boy knelt beside me, Cailerin, younger, his hands gentle. He was trying to make me laugh, weaving leaves into a small crown. Little star, he said in the memory. Do you see? Even in the dark, the sky remembers how to shine. The words hit me like a wave. Little star was not Mailer's hook. It was Cailerin's comfort, stolen and twisted. My throat burned. Cailerin watched my face, and something raw crossed his expression, as if he realized exactly what I had just reclaimed. You remember, he whispered. I nodded once. Tears threatened, but I did not let them fall yet. Not until I chose. Averin spoke from behind us, voice steady. Speak your full true name, Saleth. Not the shortened sound, the whole root. My mouth went dry. I did not know if I could say it without breaking. Cailerin stepped slightly closer, careful not to crowd me. You do not have to do it alone, he said. But you must lead. It must be your voice. My hands curled into fists. I stared at the lake and felt the weight of every year I had spent hiding. Then I exhaled and let my shoulders drop. I am here, I said, not to them, but to myself. The mark pulsed. The voice screamed in my mind. No. I lifted my chin and spoke, slowly, clearly, as if carving the sound into the air. Saleth Aelwyn Starborn. The lake answered. Light surged up from beneath the water, not blinding, but vast. It spread across the surface in delicate lines like veins of moonlight, racing outward toward the trees, into the roots, through the ground. The ward weave, the mark on my wrist burned, not like harm, but like something being peeled away. I cried out once, and the sound echoed across the lake, then faded into the silver leaves. Inside my head, Mailer's voice snapped from velvet to panic. Stop. Stop now. I kept speaking, voice shaking, but unbroken. I am Saleth Aelwyn Starborn. I am not your door. I am not your prize. I am not your silence. The tether tightened one last time, trying to drag my mind backward, trying to pull me into the old emptiness. Cailerin's hand closed around mine, firm and warm, not pulling me, holding me to the present. Stay with me, he whispered. Little star. This time the words were mine again. Not bait, not a hook. A shadow tore itself out of the lake reflection, rising like smoke shaped into a man, tall, cloaked, hungry, eyes like pale embers. Mailer. He reached toward me, not with a hand, but with intent, and I looked straight at him. You do not get to name me, I said. The ward light flared. Mailer screamed, a sound, like wind ripping through dead branches. The shadow form cracked, splintered, then broke apart into drifting ash that the lake swallowed without a ripple. Silence fell. The light softened, sinking back into the water and the roots, leaving the shore silver bright and calm. I stood trembling, wrist aching, but the mark was gone, gone. I stared at my skin as if it might return. It did not. My breath came out in a shaky laugh that turned into a sob before I could stop it. The sob cracked something open inside me, and suddenly tears were spilling hot down my cheeks. I covered my face, ashamed of the weakness. Then Cailerin stepped closer, and gently, slowly, he lifted my hands away from my eyes. Do not hide from me, he said, voice rough with emotion. Not here, not anymore. I blinked at him through tears. You should have found me sooner. His throat moved as he swallowed. I know, you should not have spoken my name in that market, I whispered. You shattered my life. He did not flinch from the accusation. I did, he said, and I would do it again if it meant you lived. But I am sorry for the fear I put in you. Truly. The honesty in it cut deeper than any excuse could have. I breathed in, shaking. You said I belonged to myself. Yes, he said immediately. Always. Then I choose, I whispered. His eyes widened slightly as if he was afraid to. Hope. I choose to stay, I said. Not because I am a ward thread. Not because the court needs me. Because I want to learn who I am when I am not running. Because I want to stop flinching every time someone looks at me. Kyloren's breath broke on a quiet exhale. Then he did something no one in Grey Harbor had ever done. He bowed to me, not as a king to a subject, as an equal acknowledging an equal. Saleth Elwyn Starborn, he said, clear and reverent. Welcome home. My chest ached. I reached out, and my fingers found his scarred hand. His skin was warm, real. When he looked at me, his eyes were bright, and for a moment the ancient stillness fell away, and he looked simply like a man who had been holding his breath for years. You once asked why I cared, he said softly. Do you still want the answer? I swallowed. Yes. He lifted my hand slightly, not to claim it, but to hold it as if it were something precious. Because you were the first light I ever wanted to keep close, he said. Not for power, not for duty. For me. My breath caught. I did not know what to say, so I told the truth the only way I could. I am afraid, I whispered. He nodded. I know. And I am still here, I said. His thumb brushed my knuckles, gentle. So am I. Across the lake, the silver trees whispered like applause made of leaves. The sentinels stayed respectfully, distant. The court remained quiet, as if it understood that some victories were not meant for cheers. I stood at the shore with my ears uncovered and my name whole in my mouth. For the first time in my life, being seen did not feel like a threat. It felt like freedom.